Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rob Talks podcast. And this is episode 22. Now, today's episode is a special episode because last week, which is now when this is being recorded, was Mental Health Awareness Week. And the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week, which we'll be covering, is the topic of loneliness. Now, I've spoken about loneliness before in terms of connections and how important it is as humans to have connections. And so much of that comes from our tribal states as where we started off as early age humans. We needed others around us to support us, to feel like a tribe, to feel like one big family. And in today's world, that is still incredibly important. And it is in fact even shown that some of the statistics related to loneliness is quite staggering, really. There is so many people both within Western countries where you would think that we would have more connection because of social media and stuff like that. And to be honest, that's even spreading across the world, that so many people, particularly in older age groups, are feeling lonely or don't have somebody to talk to. And it's really insane because we live in a world of where we're trying to be interconnected and we're trying to connect things together, but still so many of us are lonely or go through periods of loneliness where you may not even speak to others. You may not even have any kind of interaction with others that isn't anything other than digitally or just on the internet. Whatever it may be, it can feel like that we never speak to some people ever in some parts of our lives. And so loneliness is a massive thing that we have to really focus upon. And it has been shown that it is in fact one of the biggest things that causes us to struggle with our mental well-being. It can make people depressed. It can make people anxious. It can make people feel as though that they can't actually interact with others because of their lack of connection. And I think that even from the COVID-19 pandemic, that there is still this ongoing process of that we are struggling to connect back together fully as society. We are getting better, and my experience, I'll be honest, is very much based upon where I've been, which is in England and now in Norway. And so I'm seeing how society is coming back together, at least in these places, but still it is so difficult for everybody to feel as though they can integrate back into society fully, and that we can't get rid of loneliness, and that there is always going to be that problem and that issue of loneliness. Now, one thing that I always think about when I think about loneliness is, in fact, not really anything to do with people our age group, or at least a younger age group. A lot of the time, loneliness, whenever I think about it, and as statistics show, loneliness so much of the time happens in older age groups. And we can also look to that, though, as a place for solutions, because those who are within an older age bracket come up with solutions. Because, of course, if you are unfortunately someone who is widowed, or if you are somebody who has lost your lifelong partner that you've been with, it means that you're on your own and that you really need to find others to engage with. And so that's why so many things, at least I've seen within England and within the UK, so much of combating loneliness, especially in older age groups, is all to do with community and finding ways to bring people together, to do shared activities, to do gardening, to play bowls, to do like cooking together, loads of these different things that you can do together. And I think so much of that has to be encouraged as well within other age groups. Like, I find that at university, we're pretty good at having societies and having things that bring people together. But sometimes there can be cultures behind this, and there can be kind of prejudgments behind societies that mean that we don't want to join them, or that we don't want to be part of them, or that it's even in fact hard to be part of them, and it's hard to feel included or integrated in it. And so we have to find ways that we can take little actions in our lives to make sure that we are connected with others. in whatever way that may be best appropriate for yourself. But as we know, most importantly, being connected physically in person is the way that we have to look after our well-being. A Zoom call can only do so much. A YouTube video like this can only do so much. But actually being in person has something that's entirely different. There is so much more emotion behind it and so much more physical reality behind it, which us as humans just absolutely crave for. So as we start moving into the digital age, we have to make sure that we still have these in-person events. We still have these in-person connections and opportunities to connect. Otherwise, loneliness is going to rise even more. And loneliness, I think, is something that is understandably the topic for Mental Health Awareness Week because it affects so many people. We don't always think about it. And I think particularly people within my generation, when you're going through university and you're going through school, you are forced to be in communities where you have to engage with others. Yes, there are still people that feel lonely in these communities, but you have to see in how that as you get older and you go into the world of work and you're pursuing a career, you're maybe even trying to build a family. Sometimes the amount of people that you actually speak to reduces massively, and the amount of people that you engage with reduces massively. And so we have to see where we can have those little moments of where on the weekend you can go hang out with your friends or whoever is in your kind of close-knit group of people, that you can go and do something that is going to make you feel alive and with others and connected and really bring that tribalism back. And for me, that's why sport is such a massive thing, because I do a lot of my running all by myself, which 100% I have to say now is needed. You need your own time sometimes. But I can't do that with other sports, and I wouldn't want to do that with other sports, such as when I play cricket or when I go mountain biking. I want to do it with my brother, or I want to do it with my family or friends or with the cricket team, whoever it is, because there's then that connection there. There's that competition, there's that camaraderie, there's that friendship which is built there. That connection ultimately helps our well-being to stay really positive and really good, more than we realize sometimes. Sometimes we let it slide too much and we start to feel maybe depressive, maybe we feel tired, maybe we feel as though that life is just not going the way you want it. And that could be because you're staying too long inside and by yourself, or that you're not engaging with others, even virtually in some cases. And so we have to find ways that we can engage with others and keep this connection up. And this ultimately is the way that we can combat loneliness. But something that I haven't seen as much from some posts that I've been looking at and in my research of looking into Mental Health Awareness Week for this week, which is now last week because of when this video is released, essentially people haven't really mentioned about the fact of how you as an individual can engage to help reduce loneliness, because communities take time. Connections sometimes take a big chunk out of your day, and you feel as though you've got to like book out a whole half a day or a whole day just to be able to meet with somebody and spend time, or even a couple of hours which you could have been spending doing something else. But something that we have to think about is what are all the little actions that we can do that will then have this domino effect, and how they can affect others. So there's something that massively Simon Sinek speaks about, and I think I have spoke about before in a previous podcast episode, is to do with the power of being nice. The power of you doing one singular action and what that does consequently to others. And it's very similar to the kind of physical, biological action that we have as humans of when we smile or when we yawn. When we yawn, you can clearly tell that because we've yawned, then others yawn. And even speaking about it now, I'm wanting to yawn. But you find that once you yawn, others around you start to yawn, and it becomes this domino effect. And it's the same thing with smiling, or even more particularly laughing. When you laugh and you're part of a funny moment, it's infectious, it spreads to other people, and it really helps others to connect with in that moment. And that's what I think is another key to combating loneliness, is what our little actions do. What about that time of today of where you could say thank you to somebody? You could literally take 5 to 10 seconds to just say thank you, to be grateful, to have gratitude for the fact that they've cooked you lunch or dinner, the fact that they've come and studied with you today, or the fact that they've gone on a nice walk with you, whatever it may be. As long as there's that moment that you just take to say thank you, that actually means so much more than we realize. And this is why our actions can mean so much. Because all it takes is, for example, at the start of the day, you to do something nice for somebody else, whatever little action it may be. And that means that the probability and the percentage chance of that person then going and do something nice for somebody else goes up. And consequently, you create this domino effect. And I think this domino effect is a way that we reduce loneliness, because all it takes is for you to message a person and just be asking, how are you today? Genuinely, how are you doing? And you engage in a conversation, which may mean that later that day they message somebody else and ask them, how are you doing? Or even a few days later, a week later. Whatever it may be, it helps us to engage, to connect, to create more opportunities of where we can connect as humans and reduce loneliness. It's crazy how we even have to consider the fact of that. I know for in the UK we have a charity that is called Age UK, and they are able to, I believe, have a phone service that is able to take calls from elderly people who may feel vulnerable or lonely. And it's so sad that we have to do that, because that's just down by the fact that your grandma or grandpa or whoever may be kind of in the older age bracket has to call somebody else to talk to somebody, just to talk, just to go through what they're feeling, what they're thinking, even as simple as, what did you eat today? What did you do today? How's the weather? Things that are so simple but are critical for human connection. And I feel that sometimes we take it for granted that the connections that we have are going to happen every single day, and that they're going to happen continuously. As I have found within my life, I've seen that that is not the case. Unless you are somebody that, I don't know, is so extremely extroverted that you are talking to literally everybody and are trying to engage with everyone, and that actually gives energy to you and gives something back to you. The majority of humans will go through talking to others and connecting with other people like a wave. You'll have points of where it's really high and you're connecting with loads of people and you feel great. Your mental well-being probably feels amazing at that point, or even it helps you to recover better from when you've maybe felt more depressive or more sad or more down. But then it also goes down as well. We have points of where we barely speak to anybody because we're concentrating on work, we're concentrating on our own personal project. Maybe it's even for more of a positive thing that we're wanting to concentrate on ourselves. But that trend of how we're connecting with others and how we're speaking to others then affects our well-being, and we don't notice it enough. And I think just by the fact that it's so sad that those who are in an elderly bracket have to call somebody just to have a conversation shows how, as a little action of just messaging, I'm thinking more from my own angle here, but messaging your grandpa or your grandma or people who are more elderly in your family, of just going, hey, how are you? How's your day? What have you been up to? Or even engaging in the fact of that you've done something that they would love to hear about. Because those moments of connection are too few and too minimal in today's society. And especially with the breadth of technology that we are getting, we can see there's a technological divide. We know that, especially as my generation, we know that because we are all here walking around with our smartphones glued to them 24/7. But then you go and speak to your grandma and they probably don't pick up their phone all day. Or even in the case of my grandma, it's switched off most of the time. So it's an entirely different world. It's an entirely different divide. So we have to find moments to connect more. And another thing that I like to think about sometimes is also how you prioritize that, how you think about more of how you're connecting with others, if it's family, if it's friends, if it's acquaintances, business connections, whoever it may be, and actually prioritizing how much you do that. Because we don't realize it sometimes until we write it down. But when you actually look at a calendar year and map out, maybe if you looked at the previous calendar year, it's hard with COVID because that changes things. But if you look at the calendar year and actually look at how many times did I talk to my best friend? How many times did I talk to my other friends? How many times did I talk to my grandma, my grandpa, my uncle, my auntie, whoever it may be? Those people that may be really important in your life. If you actually looked at how many times you engage with them, you probably realize it's really minimal. And I'll be honest, it's something that I'm trying to change in my own life because I have done that. I have quite literally written down a scale of seeing how many times do I actually engage with people that mean a lot in my life. And the sad reality is sometimes that only happens once or twice a year. Maybe even if you're lucky once a month. And due to the lack of connectivity, I can see how that can affect others' well-being. And yes, of course, you can play the argument that everybody has more than one friend. In some cases, people don't. In some cases, people's support groups and the people that are closest to them are a small, tight-knit group. And so your actions, even your little actions, can mean so much. And so if there is anything that you take away from today's podcast episode in combating loneliness, both within your own life and within others, think about how you can take little actions in your life, in your day-to-day life, that you know are going to have that domino effect, that are going to have that effect to help people with having that real human connection. Because once we understand this, we understand how we can love one another for who we are. For us, the fact that we are the human race, we are the whole and same species, and we should be inclusively together as one. But the world that we live in loves to divide us. Opinions, technology, politics, society. So much of it is dividing us, and we need to find more ways to bring ourselves together. And so if you work out what are the little actions that I can do in my life to help bring others together and even them together with yourself to help you with your mental well-being, that will make such a massive difference. It's hard to fathom, but it will massively help so many people. And so work out how you can be nice. Work out how you can say thank you. You can message somebody. You can send somebody some flowers. You can engage with somebody who you've not spoken to in ages. And even just something as simple as asking, how are you? How's your day? It's so simple, but so, so powerful. And we need to do this more and more as society and the world is trying to divide us. We need to come together. You have been listening to the Rob Talks podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week for the next Rob Talks video.
You have just been listening to the Rob Talks podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and please make sure to subscribe and give me a follow on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, or even LinkedIn. And I will speak with you soon. Stay safe and have a great week.